Hey everybody, how's it going? So, you have a map like this with landscape. Sadly, there's no displacement no more in Unreal Engine for landscape. And this looks pretty bland. This is just a landscape with a couple of Megascans in the background. And I wish there was an easy way to fill this up pretty quickly without having to scatter a ton of nanite Megascans over here. Oh, look. There is something I used to do, and we're going to talk about that in this video. So if you want your environment looking this flat to looking like this, stick around and I'll show you how. All right, so this is a kind of like Mars-ish environment that I'm making for a coming short film. I just have a couple of props here. And when I started building this, I just started adding Megascans. You can see that I even have some groups here, but doing groups can only get you so far. It's just easier to do the Mega Assemblies. It's just easier all around. And I already have a video on how to do Mega Assemblies, but we're going to take it to the next level and we're going to make Mega Assemblies with Megascans and our own assets. Now you're not going to have to go to Blender this time. So what I tried to do here is something that would get my environment looking really nice and having a lot of detail, but also I can see the ground plane being all sand and nice, which will also include in there. Now, most of the ground materials, you no longer can have them as nice as I used to, and you can see there's a couple of seams here and there because I just need to take these things kind of like just one peg and that's it. But my point is, there is no longer a way for you to kind of like give some life to the landscape unless you go the high field route. I've tried it a couple of times. It's very weird and long process, and this is just much easier and straightforward. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna create Mega Assemblies, but we're going to add some of the ground displacement part that's also included in Unreal Engine. Now, first thing you're gonna need, of course, let me just save all. Always use save all. By the way, this is a quick tip. Always do this one, because if you just do Control S, that's just going to save your level. And if you did any changes to the materials or the meshes, that's not gonna stick. So always save all. It's just a small tip. Sorry about the tangent, but let's go into a new level. For this, you're going to need a new level. And you're going to be using an empty level. You're not going to be doing basic or open world or any of these three. You're going to be doing this empty level. So I'm going to hit create. And I also suggest that you have your Mega Assemblies into a folder, because when you do this, you save a level and you save the Mega Assembly. So you don't have your whole folder, content folder clutter with stuff. I really suggest you just make a folder for it. It's just a little bit more organized. So what we're gonna do is we're going to be adding some Megascans here. I'm gonna go into Megascans, 3D assets, and since I don't want to go into each single folder, I wanna make things easier to myself, I make a filter over here. So if you don't know how to make filters, just go here and just give a check mark to whatever you wanna filter. In this case, I just wanna look at static meshes. There it is. And we're gonna bring some static meshes in here. So let's go from here to, I think, all the way here. Yeah, that's fine. I'm just gonna drag them all here and let me just scatter them around a little bit. Okay, so is this 4? This 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, perfect. Now, this is pretty dark, so let's just add a light here. I'm just gonna add a directional light. It's kind of like on top of these. It doesn't matter. Now, we have these, and we could actually combine them and do all sorts of things with them like I did in the previous video. However, the issue with this is you would create an assembly that's purely made of rocks, and we also want a little bit of the ground in there because we just don't want everything to be pebbles and rocks. So the way that we can achieve this is by using the modeling tools that are here in Unreal Engine. So before we get into that, let me show you how you can activate it. You just have to go to settings, plugins, and I type modeling, And there it is. You're gonna choose the one that says Modeling Tools Editor Mode. You're not gonna choose the Static Mesh Editor Modeling Mode because this is the one that we'll be using here. It's gonna tell you that it's beta and that you need to restart as usual. So just accept and restart. Even though it says beta, it actually works pretty well. Now, once you've done that and you come back to Unreal, you're gonna click here and you're gonna see that you have a new mode called Modeling. You can also access this by pressing Shift 5. So I'm just gonna click here and get these two tabs. I'm just gonna place this tab right here so I have more real estate. And we have our modeling tools. If you have done 3D art in the past, some of these tools may be very familiar to you and they're pretty easy to use. However, they can only get you so far. So personally, if I was going to do actual 3D modeling for a prop, a character or whatever, I'd still do it in Maya. I still do it in 3ds Max, whatever, Blender, any of the 3D packages. I don't think this package is ready for actual 3D art other than probably some level design. Now, for what we're trying to do, it's actually pretty interesting and pretty easy to use. So we have a rectangle here, which is the same grid that I used in Blender in the displacement video that I did in the past. So we're going to be using this one. If you click on rectangle, you're going to see that you get a message here saying that you just created a rectangle. It's only waiting for you to place it. So in order for you to place it here, you need to click. Now, before you click, there are a couple of things here that I want you to change. So I'm just going to get everything back to default. And as you can see, it has a width of 100 and a depth of 100. Most of the Megascans that you download are 2x2, meaning 2 meters by 2 meters, which means it should be 200 by 200. So Unreal works with the metric system. Sorry if you work in Imperials, I work in both, so it's fine. Now I'm just going to do 200. So it's just one tile, exactly one tile for the material. I'm going to do 200 in width and height, so they're both the same. Also here in subdivisions, you can just add whatever subdivision, many subdivisions you want. I do add some subdivisions. We are going to further subdivide this when we get into the displacement part, but I just like to add some subdivisions here. If you go to wireframe, you can see that this has pretty much nothing in there. So it's just one big polygon. Now what I like to do is, let's just do 16 by 16, which is what I think I had before. There you go, 16 by 16. So that's more than enough. All you have to do is place it, click on complete, and just put it whatever you want. I'm just gonna throw it in the center of the universe. After you have done this, then we need to add our displacement. So of course you're going to have to download something from the Megascans library, which I did. I actually have a bunch of surfaces here. And the one that I was using for this purpose, which you already saw in the intro, is this sandy one. So if I open this one, you're gonna see that it's just sand. However, I did alter it a little bit just to create a different look than when it comes from. So there is no tiling, but there is some changes here in the albedo tint. There's some changes here in the saturation controls. I do have a video about materials in my intro to beginners for Unreal Engine 5. So if you don't know what this is, please go check that playlist. It's gonna be in the description down below. So I got my material here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna throw the material onto this plane. If we go from lit wireframe to lit, you're gonna see that we have a cool flat plane. And it's going to be hard to mesh it with everything else. Now what we're going to do is we're going to displace it with this tool over here that says displace. So with your rectangle you just created, select it, you're going to click on display. And it's going to do this. It's going to look very wacky and crazy. If we go to wireframe, you can see what it's doing. It's just going to be insane. And if you yeah, I just brought everything to default. So this is how it's going to look for you once you open it the first time. It's going to have the displacement type purling noise, which is not what we want right now. That's actually good for doing some variations, but not for this texture that we're using. So from here, you're going to change that to texture 2D map because we want to use the texture that came in with Megascans. So if we click here, then now it's going to want to use the texture. And before we get into the texture part, you can see here that there are some subdivisions. So again, if you didn't want to subdivide in the beginning, you have a second chance to subdivide it here. I do recommend that you subdivide in the beginning when you create a rectangle. However, it's just makes things easier. So you can subdivide as much as you want. I think 6 is fine. More than 6 is probably overkill. However, depends on what kind of resolution and how close to the mesh are you going to be. If you're not going to be that close, you don't need as much resolution. That being said, we're going to nanite this mesh, so it's not going to matter that much. Okay, now for the displacement map. What are you going to use for displacement map if you don't have an actual displacement map here when you import Megascans from Quixel Bridge? The displacement map is actually here in the ORD texture. Every time you import any Megascan from Quixel Bridge, it's going to give you a ORD map. Let's open it so you can see it. All right, so this ORD it's a packed texture. So it contains occlusion, that's for O, roughness, that's for the R, and D is the displacement. And the way they are plugged in is R is for occlusion, G is for roughness, and blue is for, or B is for displacement. So as long as you remember those, you'll be fine. So just remember R is for occlusion, G is, or green is for roughness, and blue or B is for displacement. So we're going to, if I do this, you can actually see where the displacement is. And I can show it to you another way. If we throw it in here, now it's gonna look fine because I already have the blue channel, but if we had the red channel, see how janky it looks because the red channel is not displacement map. Also, if I go to the green channel, nothing's gonna happen because that isn't the displacement map. If I go to the alpha, it's not gonna do anything because there's no alpha in this texture. So I'm gonna go to the blue, and there you go. Now, if you're not happy with how much your geometry is being displaced, well, you can actually see what's going on here. There is some displacement happening, but if you wanna push it even further, you can go here and increase it. So let's do something ridiculous like 20. You can see that it actually pushes those polygons upwards a little bit more. Now I'm going to leave it down to 15 because that's the number that I usually use, where it's a good in between pushing a good amount just before it starts getting distorted. So I'm just gonna leave it here at 15, subdivision type, PN triangles or flat. That actually doesn't change anything. As you can see, it might have an effect on other types of geometry, but not on this. If you have a particular UV scale that you want, so let's say if you have this material tiled 4 times, then you need to type 4 over here in UV scale for the U and the V. But because we're using just one, so it's the same scale, we're not gonna change anything from here. Now, once you are done, you'll just have to do is accept. And it's going to create a plane for you in your content browser. Now, ours is called rectangle something, but it's going to make a folder called generated. So underscore generated, it does the underscore, so it goes, actually it's a folder that goes all the way to the top if you have a lot of folders here. So if we double click here, it has my name. All right, and now we have it here, and you can actually go here and rename. So let's rename this to sand ground. All right, we're gonna double click and we're going to make this a nanite. So this doesn't have the material. Let's just go here, click the magnifying glass and just dump the material in here. And there you go, we have the material. And we know this thing is displaced because you can see the little divots in here. So click on save. That means that this is saved. We go back to where this is, but we need to make this mesh nanite first. So we go and enable nanite support. Just click here, apply. It's going to take a little bit depending on your machine. Mine is done. I'm going to save it again, and now we have a nanite mesh. However, if I were to go here and nanite visualization triangles, you can already see all the nanite triangles over here. All right, so pretty cool. Now, what we need to do is I actually want to create a mega assembly that's big enough, like what you just saw, to encompass a big portion of the terrain without me having to place small assemblies and rotating them and all that. So I want to create kind of like in between pebbles and ground at the same time. All right, so we're gonna go into this characters folder where I have the mannequin meshes. We're gonna throw in the mannequin here. The reason why we're doing that is to know how big we want things to be. All right, so what we're gonna do with this is what we would do with landscape tiling. So if I had a landscape and I wanted a bunch of this, I would of course tile it. But in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clone this however amount of times to make just a big piece of terrain and mix it with these rocks. So I'm going to click on grid snap, which is this blue square that I have right here. The blue means it's on. I'm just gonna hold Alt and clone it. And as you can see, because this is a tileable texture, it snaps right in place. So there you go, we have a bigger square. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep on cloning until I get a big piece of the terrain. And I'll see you in a bit. Another way that I usually do things a little bit faster, just to give you a tip, is I go to the top. And in the top, you can be on wireframe, you can be on lit mode, whatever you want. And you can just do this. You can square select and then hold Alt and drag just the same. So I'm just going to do this. And I think this piece is pretty big. So I'm just going to throw it here in roughly the center. I'm going to go back to perspective. And I have my terrain pretty flat and pretty repetitive. However, what I want to do is I want to grab my stones, my pebbles, and start throwing them all around, making sure they look nice and good. So let's see, we have these here. Let's bring them up. And I'm gonna uncheck the grid snap. It's gonna bring them all up as much as I can so I can see them. All right, so we got these 4, there they are. All right, so I just want them to be like this. I'm just going to do some rotation and placement around here. And there's nothing to this, so I'm going to time lapse it, and I'll see you in a minute. All right, we are done. And our character is going through the floor. Just bring it up a little bit. There you go. All right. Now, again, the point of this is so we have a ground covering that's not landscape, that is displaced. It's subtly displaced, but this blends a little bit better with the rocks as opposed to just having a straight up flat landscape. So if I were to go here and just select all the rectangles, hide them, this is how it would look. So again, this is a very cool way to cover your ground pretty easy. Now, we're not done here. I'm actually going to delete our character and I'm going to go to the top. All right, now I move things a little bit to the center because this is how I am and how I like to have my things here. It doesn't matter, and you're going to see that this pretty much doesn't do much. We're going to have our pivot in the center, however, and the way that we're going to do that is by adding an empty actor. If you've seen my previous Mega Assembly video, you probably know what's coming next. So all we have to do is go here, get out of modeling mode because we don't need that anymore. We're going to type actor. That's going to give us this empty. And I'm going to make the empty to the center of the universe. If I go to the top view, there you go. It's right in the dead center of the universe. That's where my pivot's going to be. And I'll just move it roughly in the center. And the reason why I said it doesn't matter too much if you move it in the center or not is because you can always move this guy to wherever you want. So that's just me. Again, these meshes are not dead in the center, but the actor is. Now that we have everyone here, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to delete the light. We're going to go to unlit mode. And I just want to make sure that I don't have anything extra here, because we are going to select everything and we're going to throw it into the Mega Assembly. So I'm going to start from the actor all the way down, holding shift, select everything. And now we just right click and you can see there's this one level tab. This part is a bit different than before because we used to have a create level from selected. That's what we did last time. So now we have this level menu. So if you saw the other one, you probably want to still see this part. And we're going to go into create packed level actor. So I'm going to click here and new packed level actor. We're going to leave this in default. And for the pivot, just as I mentioned, your actor, your empty, this guy right here, is going to be your pivot. So we can click here and change it to actor. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to automatically select this. You also have to tell where the pivot's going to be. So pivot actor, click here, and we have him in the first part because it's made in alphabetical order. So we're just going to click here and our pivot's going to always be at the dead center. So we click OK. Now this is why I told you to make some folders, because this is going to ask you to create a level and a blueprint so you don't have a clutter in your content folder. I'm going to call this MA underscore ground underscore level 02. I'm going to save it. Now it's going to tell me where I want to save my asset, and this is a default name that it gives it, which is fine. I just want to go a folder before where I have the previous one that I created over here. As you can see, it's BPP, which is the blueprints. I don't know what the extra P is for, but this is something that it adds by default. You can change this if you want. Just hit save. I'm just going to hit save. And it is created. Our Mega Assembly is pretty much done. Now let's go back to a level and let's add it to our environment. There we are. Let's go back to lit mode. And I left this center here so we can add our newly created blueprint. And there you go. You can actually toss it around this way, mix and match. And if you've seen my intro to beginner, pretty much know that I love to do this. And we get a pretty cool environment already, where before this was completely empty and flat, and now you have all these things going on. And again, this is a cool and easy way to fill up your space very quickly without having to go place assets one by one. You just do it the one time with the Mega Assembly and you're done. Just keep throwing it in here however many times you need to fill all this and to make it feel alive, because this flat landscape wasn't doing it for me. Now again, some people commented on my previous video that, hey, why don't I use group actors? And yes, you can by all means use group actors. The issue with group actors, that group actors are created in your level, and that is it. When you create mega assemblies, you have them here in your content folder. So if you want to use it in another project, you can actually migrate it. If you want to use it in another level of the same project, you can also use it right there. If it was for the groups, you have to Control-C and Control-V if you want to bring the groups to another level. And if you just want to migrate the groups, I don't know of a way that you could do that. If you know of a way, just let me know. But anyways, this is what I wanted to show you right here, because I'm just building this environment in Mars, and it's going to be for a pretty cool short film. There's going to be something here. That's why I left this in black, because there's going to be something here as part of the short film. Thank you so much for watching this video. As always, subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment. Shout out to my patrons that are right here on screen right now. My level 2 patrons are always on screen on my videos. If you want to donate, to the first level, you get some perks on Discord as well. There is a join button and a thank you button right now that you can use. There's a Twitter, Instagram. If you have any problems, if you run into any issues, do not forget to come to our Discord server. It's right in the description. That's the place where I and over 1,000 people in our community can help you out with anything Unreal. And I'll see you in the next one.